really won't have any comments at the end. Myself and some others, we're going to have to hop out just short of 11 o'clock for another meeting. So I'll have Asper take over from there. By way of announcements, just be aware that next week we're going to take a break from the enlisted perspectives, OPDs. We're going to do a little bit on reflection and evaluation. And next Thursday, we won't have an OPD. We're going to have a 1522 on Friday with the boss as he does his 2-year look back. So that's how next week is shaping up. Okay, introducing this week, flight engineer and Loadmaster perspectives. Like I said, I'm not an expert, so I gave you some psychobabble on building rapport and defense mechanisms. So hopefully you found that informative. We got 2 dudes from the training shop who are totally awesome. We got Joel Bechdel representing the FEs, and where did Waters go? I don't see Waters. But Ty Waters is coming in representing the Loadmasters. So what we like to do with our guest speakers is have you guys just a short bio on you dudes, how you got here, ascended the heights of the C5 community, and then a little bit about what you do in the squadron. We can lead off with Joel. Thanks guys for showing up.
There we go. My name is Joel Bechdel. Thanks for the introduction. I really did enjoy that video you put up, by the way. Let's see, my story, I cross-trained back in 2010. So for flight engineers, something we'll get into is how we got to be flight engineers. And right now, we're all cross-flowed from a different AFSC. So I was at Tinker, working on AWACS, working on the rotodome and radar specialist. Didn't like it, put in for cross-training, and got picked up for flight engineer. Got to Travis end of 2010, 2011. Then I was here till about 2015. Then I got blessed with the assignment to go to Tinker and go back to AWACS for manning assist that needed flight engineers, and they chose me, fortunately. So I got to go be a flight engineer on AWACS, the plane I ran from to get to be a flight engineer. And fortunately, AMC needed people again, so I kept throwing my name in the hat, and I got picked up. I got to come back to the C5, got to come back to Travis, which is fortunate. And through that time, upgraded to instructor at Tinker, came back here, got upgraded again to instructor, and then now I'm in the flight engineer training shop. A little more personal information about me is I'm married. I've been married since 2006. We have 3 kids. So some of the younger pilots, you're closer in age to my oldest son, who's 13, than you are to me. I'll be 37 this year. I know it's hard to believe because I look so young and spry, but it's true. It's reality. So I have a 13-year-old, I have a 10-year-old, and I have a 3-year-old. So it's interesting, it's busy, and it's been fun. I look forward to it. I enjoy being here.
That's awesome. Well, welcome and thanks for taking the time this week. Ty Waters.
How's it going, everybody? Yeah, I'm Tech Sergeant Ty Waters. I've been a Loadmaster since the beginning of my career. So I joined at 18. In 2007 is when I came in. I went through upgrade and everything, got qualified in 2008 out of Dover. I spent right under 10 years at Dover and made up through primary instructor and evaluator all the way through there. Then 2016, I believe. I don't remember anymore. I got PCS up to Guam to work for the 36 Mobility Response Squadron. It's a detachment from the CRWs that you guys have probably heard around Travis and McGuire and stuff. It's like a smaller unit out there that deals mostly with POTUS movements and humanitarians, and then drop zone ops on the islands out there and stuff. So I did a bunch of teaching out there as well for the last 3 years. Then got to the 22nd July. When I showed up, I went directly to the NCO Academy to knock that out. And then ever since then, I've been leading the Loadmaster training section. So yeah, mine's pretty cut and dry. Like I said, I'm a baby load. I've been in a Loadmaster air crew since day one, since I joined. So I didn't have the breadth of experience like Sergeant Bechdel had, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Personal note, I am married, have 2 kids. I got a 10-year-old and a 4-year-old that run my life. So yeah, pretty simple.
That's awesome. Welcome. Thanks for coming out and taking the time. Before opening the floor up to questions from the gallery, I just have one to kind of kickstart things, and we can start from the engineer perspective and then do the Loadmaster perspective. The big question is, if you could just give us a kind of a synopsis of how the training program works for our FEs and loads, and any special considerations or things that maybe pilots don't know about or don't consider or don't think about that weighs heavily on you guys. Love to hear your perspective.
Not a whole lot. Our story is all pretty much like majority of us cross-trained. The story of the flight engineer is, I don't know the history of where it became, but it's our designator is 1 Alpha 1. So we pride ourselves on, like, we were the first AFSC, right? I don't know what that means. There's some guys that were, when I came through, that were older and crustier and like really held that and made sure you knew there was importance behind your job. We cross-flowed. So that means we enlisted in the Air Force. We had a job. And in the past, you had to hold a 2 Alpha 5 AFSC, which was a maintenance background. You had to work around aircraft or work on aircraft or be involved with them to get selected for this job. For a while, Manning went down to where they opened it up to all AFSCs, but no one up till recent years had been able to come in just off basic training and be a flight engineer. So now that's changing, but we'll see. It's been tested out in the past and didn't always work out with the desired results, so it's kind of come and gone. But like I said, we all cross-flowed in this career field. So a lot of us come from a maintenance background. Like I said, I was AWACS maintenance, and then at our first enlistment, either halfway through your enlistment, you have a small window, and then at your first enlistment, you have an opportunity to cross-train where you can't, it's harder for the Air Force to deny your cross-train unless you're in a critical manned field. So I wasn't critical. I submitted for cross-training. I got approved, and our training starts with, you go to San Antonio, go through some basic aircrew fundamentals courses, and then you get selected for your once you go to your basic flight engineer course, you'll find out your airframe once you're there, and then you'll go to your designated schooling after that. So all the C5 guys have been in for anywhere from 4 to 6 years time in the Air Force before they even show up to Travis. And then they start approximately a 2-year upgrade training from the time you go to your first class at San Antonio to the time you graduate and become a qualified MF at Travis. You look to have at least 2 years involved, if not more. So once you show up to Travis, out of San Antonio, you'll spend anywhere from 6 to 8 months down there, depending on the availability of aircraft and training you get. So you show up scanner certified. So you guys know your scanners. They show up here. We give them a local rec ride, and then they're allowed to be the guy outside. And then during that time, they have 45 days to complete their initial, certification, if you will, for a scanner. And then after that, they start their upgrade training to sit at the panel by themselves. Right now, our training jacket's cut for 6 months. It used to be a year, and we just conducted training review board, and they're pushing it out to over 200 days again because it's just unrealistic to take somebody from scanner position and get them qualified upstairs in 6 months. So then once they enter that training, we get them out on, there's requirements to accomplish so many locals, so many actual operational missions. They have 5 operational missions they have to accomplish. 2 locals they'll have to sit through, and then there's more training here at Travis where they'll go through a course through SimStar and then some sims. That's the training that the engineers require, and how you become an MF.
And then for the Loadmasters, so it's pretty straightforward across the frames. C5 is a little bit different. So the opposite of the engineers is most Loadmasters are actually they're pipeline. They're right out of basic training. We're, I would say, probably 80-20 on pipeline versus cross train. Pipeline just means that you're coming straight from basic training into a technical role, so you've never held a certification or any type of job like that before. But we do go kind of along the same path. We go to an aircrew fundamentals course, which, if I remember right, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. And then directly from that, even within the same building, you go over to what's called basic Loadmaster training. And there is when you get introduced for the first time into what a Loadmaster is. So they get their hands on for the first time of the Form F that I know a lot of you have seen and stuff like that. It's the first time they get interaction with that. These 2 courses are also the big washout phases. So during that time, I don't know what the percentages are now, but usually it's something like a class starts about 30 and graduates with, roughly between 15 and 20. So that's our big washout phases, is during that first like month or 2. And then after that, all the pipeline students, all the cross trainers for loads go on to do their water survival and SEER. And then from there is when they branch off to your respective aircraft. So the C-130s then head out to Little Rock to go deal with their stuff. The 17s go out to Altus. And then for C-5s, we go back to Texas. We go to Kelly. And this is where things get kind of different with the C-5 loads compared to the other airframes. Is the other airframes work with flight safety representatives just like we do and stuff, but they also work with active duty Air Force AETC qualified instructors. So they are working with guys that are current qualified, that still deploy and everything like that. They're just holding a T code at that time. They're actual instructors. C5s go and work with flight safety retired Loadmasters down at Kelly. So so by this time they've had very minimal, if any, interaction with C5 qualified Loadmasters. And so during that time, they literally just learn the basics of the aircraft on like where emergency equipment is and how to kneel, stuff like that, like very basic stuff. They don't get into loading or anything along those lines. They do a ground check down there. It does not give them a certification, but it does start the aeronautical orders to come to their respective base. When they show up to the 22nd, they are still not qualified in anything. Like the engineers show up, they're qualified as a scanner and stuff. They've actually had several flights and stuff like that. Loadmasters have not. They're qualified on absolutely 0. So they show up to the squadron as the first time that they're actually interacting with a no-lie qualified C5 Loadmaster in any perspective, whether it be instructor or evaluator or just an ML or anything like that. And it's the first time that they've really dealt with other crew positions as well, including pilots and engineers. And like I said, these are mostly young, very shocked individuals that kind of show up. They show up, at 18, 19 years old, and this is the first time they hit that. Yes, you guys can probably tell it's a little bit of an experiment that's going on. But yeah, in a nutshell, that is the walkthrough on becoming a load. The whole timeline, I would say for the average takes somewhere between, if you're burning through about a year and a half on average, and then we've had individuals go all the way up to 2. That's all I got.
Awesome, thanks. I don't want to hog the conversation, so I'm just going to open it up to the floor for any questions from our pirates or Lindsay Fry. Fire away.
So just to make sure I understand, that 1.5 years, is that from the time they get out of basic training, or is that once they show up at the squadron?
No, I would say that's almost when they join. So from joining to be qualified, it's about a year and a half. And then to put in perspective, the average AFSC, like enlisted program, from start of basic training to fully qualified is about 3 months is the average. So kind of perspective on like what they have to go through compared to a typical job like you would see in services or security forces or somewhere along that line.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's quite a bit longer. Also, when you said they show up to the squadron, that's the first time interacting with a qualified Loadmaster. How long from that point until like they are ready to be a mission qualified Loadmaster?
So we are held to a 180-day timeline. However, what you guys have been seeing lately is an influx of Loadmasters that is, it's still a very big, like I kind of said before, it's like almost like an experiment, is where typically the Loadmasters in both here in the 9th, the students is about 5 to 10 at the being the highest. Right now we're above 30. So we're still held to that 180-day timeline. However, ours is based on mission, like actual rides. It's not days in training. So they don't have a written daily syllabus like you would see like an AETC or something along those lines, where you can actually look at day of training 40 and see what you're learning that day. Ours are based on the missions that they receive. So if they don't get the good missions, or if they don't get out, you can kind of start to understand that like that 180 days might be pushed out even longer. Or if the individual is really proactive in their own training and really does take the time in studying themselves, they could get out in that 180 days, or if not even sooner. It's really personality based on the individual, on how much they do consideration for their training.
Gotcha. It's good to know. Thank you.
Hey, I'll just
For the engineers,
on the enlisted and on the engineers and the Loadmaster side of things, it's pretty unique that we're forced to train those guys on operational missions. You know, so imagine going back to pilot training, right? When you take your first ride, and it takes you 20-25 minutes to run your T6, you know, just the checklist and do your walk around and stuff like that. These guys are still operating on that 3+45 timeline or 4+15 timeline on the ground, and it could be their first or second or third ride, having never been on the C5. So it's a super challenging environment for our instructor, Loadmasters, and engineers, because they have to balance letting these guys fail and learn with the fact that sometimes we're backed up against a 24-hour day. So it's not the ideal training environment for these guys to be on real operational missions. It's cool because they get to see it and live it right off the bat. But in a lot of ways, it would be like your UPT dollar ride being your first mission in the C5 and just trying to learn how to be a pilot kind of along the way.
yeah, and for engineers, the certification for scanner, you get down in Kelly, but you might get 3 or 4 rides. I don't remember how many rides it is exactly to get scanner certed down there, but you're not like critical as far as like the mission planning for their locals, because that's all they fly down at Kelly. So they'll get a couple locals at Kelly. Throughout their training, they might get 3 or 4 ground trainers, but for some of these people that don't have a ton of experience with aircraft, or if they come from like a back shop job, or if they come from, now it wasn't always a requirement to have a maintenance background. So these guys are showing up, the students are showing up in their first like real operational mission. They're stepping to a C5 and they have a whole crew to consider. They're still learning everything from like radio discipline to, you know, managing their time, to how do they get through forms, and how do they, you know, get around the aircraft and interact with the crew, and still they have this training folder to fill out, and they got, you know, boxes they got to check. And so it's a pretty steep learning curve when it goes from scanner to upstairs, because you're going from, like I said, someone who might not have a ton of experience with aircraft to, like Major Loftus said, you know, here's your crew, here's your plane, here's your checklist, figure it out. We got to go. So, and again, the students we're dealing with as far as engineers go, I mean, some of them are adults who've been in the Air Force for 7, 8 years longer. Some of them cross-train later in their careers. I mean, we have senior airmen that cross-train all the way through master sergeants that cross-train. So we talk about adult learners. We talk about how to, you know, instruct in that environment with someone who may or may not have a lot of experience, but also it's, you know, teaching them through those means of just adult learner, right? So how do you make it important to them? How do you reach them? And this is somebody who has to be humbled themselves. They're now getting told by a senior airman loadmaster where to go, what to do, you know, where they can go to the bathroom. Don't poop in the flight deck. Here's a tech sergeant getting told by a senior airman that they're, you know, how to operate on the road. Well, the senior airman's been flying on the C5 for close to 5, 6 years, you know, and this tech sergeant shows up and he's zero experience. So it makes for a pretty interesting crew dynamic, especially when, you know, I mentioned that learning curve and who we're instructing and where you're at and the challenges you come to with like the 24-hour days, the time constraints and everything. So those are all things we take into consideration when we're, again, pushing the student through training and the boxes to check and everything else.
Joel and Tyler, what are some things that you guys have seen from pilots on the road that you feel like has been detrimental to some of the engineer student development attitudes, the way people handle themselves, comments that they've made, things that you feel like he's maybe either driven a wedge or just has kind of set a poor example?
The really detrimental or negative is pretty small, but I will say that the things I have seen in the past have not always been attitude driven, but just how you carry yourself. You're influencing anywhere from not just loadmasters because they're new and young, but engineers, they're new to being a crew member as well. So if they see a young lieutenant and or captain, if they see the AC and everyone's like keeping it on a very bro level, and you know, they go to hand out, okay, crew, this is our setup, this is what we're looking for, there's a change to it, and there's like the group in the corner laughing, joking. The pilots were in the brief, they already got the information, so they're just kind of hanging out and joking around and stuff. Well, so is that okay for us to hang out and joke around and everything? There's just you know, how you carry yourself on the road, everything from, you know, briefings to understanding that, you know, it all plays a part. There's a bigger scope of influence you might have when you're coming to some impressionable, younger, newer aircrew members. Things like that. It could, you know, just set a bad example. But other than that, I don't have any specific that like I feel drive a wedge in between. Obviously bad attitude would, but I haven't seen a lot of that. Colonel Kramer has brought up in the past, you know, working to embrace the culture, and I think that gets stressed quite a bit. How you go about doing that is different, but that's when I would go back to just looking at how you're perceived and how you conduct yourself. Do you have anything, Sergeant Waters?
Yeah, I mean, as for loads, really, when it comes to pilot interaction, you know, even throughout my career, like you're always going to have, you know, that relationship with a pilot that like kind of crosses the line. Like pilots either get too lax on the road or they get too strict or along those lines, but they usually get stomped. Pilots in general have always been really, like gives really corrective really quickly. So right when you guys do great feedback among each other and stuff. So if you guys hear that the way a certain pilot acts on the road with the enlist and stuff isn't good, or the pilots, or that you hear the engineer or the enlisted like mumbling under the breath about a certain pilot, like that gets corrected really quick. Our biggest thing on the road is, and I'm sure everybody here, I'm pretty candid about it, is when it comes to enlisted, like we eat our own. Like the biggest like negative influences that come on the road really have nothing to do with pilots. If anything, the pilots are kind of like that. They're like the sweet, and they're the ones that everybody kind of goes to on the crew. Like Loadmasters, we dog on each other, engineers dog on each other. Loads and engineers are always at each other's throats. So, which is something that like we have great relationships with and stuff like that. And usually it's just it's all in fun and everything like that. But really, pilots, like I've never truly seen like an actual negative effect from pilots on the road. I've had pilots that I disagree with and stuff like that, and I will again. But in the long run, that I've seen the 22nd, and I saw it the 9th too, is like I said, that as long as that the correctiveness can come swiftly, which it does in the pilot community way better than it does in the engineer or the Loadmaster community. I think it's on the right track. Like I said, like Joel said, I have nothing specific that's ever happened to me on the road where I'm like, the pilot is the main cause for this reason. Usually it stems from much more than just that. That's all I got.
I do like we eat our own. I know pilots can be tough on one another as well, but there is a sense that you want to be accepted by your peers and everything. And there's like you said, when I'm out on the road with another NCO who's going through training, or someone who has a lot of experience on the aircraft, but they're new to training, we do have to maintain that like professional relationship or that distance to where it's just like, yeah, I'll go. If anyone's flown with me, they know like, I enjoy to get off the road and have the lobby beers and, drinks on the bus and everything. So, but when it gets to the aircraft, you try to maintain that professional relationship. And it can get not confused, I guess, blurred, I guess, when we try to maintain that professional relationship. But then if we want to, if we're going to maintain that where we eat our own and give each other some shit and some good ribbing and, try to drive the lessons home, then it's up to us to make sure we keep ourselves accountable. And that's where the relationships go with the entire crew, right? You got to keep yourself accountable and hold yourself to that standard. So when you do have something to say, it gets taken seriously. And I saw in the video, Colonel Kramer, you mentioned those defensive mechanisms. And one of the things was sarcasm. And if you conduct yourself on the road with too much sarcasm, which I've been trying to work on myself, not being too sarcastic, it just all plays a part in how you instruct and who you're instructing, and making sure the student isn't, trying to get too involved, chummy or whatever, and just use sarcasm and deflect it and stay on some bro friendship level. But at the same time, I've used sarcasm enough to where when I went to pay someone a genuine compliment, the reply was, I don't know if you're being serious or not. They've flown with me enough to where they're like, well, I appreciate that. But so we try to watch how we interact, but then keep it professional and serious and everything else.
And I think off of that too, like something for officer development is that like line that you can draw from, because it's been brought up in the squadron a lot lately, is like, A1Cs saying, calling officers by the first name in the squadron and stuff like that. That really does derive from like the officer on the road. I'm for it though. I really am. I mean, there's pilots in this, chat right now that I've known for over 10 years that, we've been through a lot together. However, the difference is that I have learned as enlisted that I know when to turn that on and off. So I know when I could have a completely candid conversation with, Loftus or somebody else. And I know when I need to button it up and give him the respect that he deserves as my superior, as my boss, and as an officer. And that really comes from the perspective that I got from officers when I was an airman. And that's where I would kind of say right now is, if you're unsure as an officer, if you can kind of like put down the hammer when you need to on your crew and expect and hold them accountable to their jobs. But then when you're in crew rest, to be able to be like, hey, let's go get some beers in the lobby or something like that, and really open up on a personal level and be able to have that morale boosting event type thing and not jeopardize that professional relationship, do it. If you can't, if you don't feel like it, the one that needs to be sacrificed is that morale one, is that like personal level one. Because if you have a tough time like stepping back into that like leadership type of role in your crew, NCOs, we get it. Like, we've been through a lot. We've dealt with a lot of officers all the time. We're fine with that. The newer airmen, especially loadmasters, they're not used to it. So they're going to get really confused on when, like, all of a sudden, why is this captain all of a sudden like mad at me when last night we just had a couple beers? Well, that may not be the airman's fault. That may be the captain didn't really like just like swing back into that, like, this is now my position now that we're on this plane or in this office. And that's just something from our officer development is airmen really eat off on that first impression or the best impression that they get from an officer. And the best impression they're going to get is that officer sitting in a hotel lobby drinking a beer with it. It may not be that guy saying like, hey, we have an hour until takeoff. You need to hurry up and get downstairs and finish that load. So that's more like kind of like an opinion of mine is if you're not sure on how to make that like that transition from leadership to almost like mentor in like a personal environment versus a professional environment, the one that I personally think that needs to be sacrificed is maybe that personal one. You need to make sure that they respect you as their superior, as their AC or whatever status you might hold for them, before you want to be like that cool guy that just bought him a beer at a hotel lobby. So.
Hey, I put this in the chat first because my internet's been real shoddy this morning, but are there any areas where, as an NCO or in your technical position, that you wish we were more involved in, and then follow up, you wish we were less involved in?
I saw that and I was trying to think of how it would be. I think we have a pretty good relationship and a pretty good setup in the squadron as far as involvement goes. I can't think of how we would increase or decrease the level of interaction. If somebody's uncomfortable with it, it might be a necessary part of the job to have them there. And if there was ever a lack of it, I don't think anyone has had a problem asking for the help. I've asked officers for help with rewards packages, and I've asked for help for, just general advice and all kinds of things. And then, I certainly never felt, I've never gone to a meeting and just been like, where the hell are all the officers? Like, that's never been said ever, as far as I'm concerned. But no, I think we have a good ratio of involvement.
Yeah, I think with training, like the leadership we have back in training right now is they really are rocking it. They don't micromanage. They don't, try to change the wheel in every single section. And I think it's based on the fact that they know that the way Loadmaster training is ran and the way engineer training is ran and the way pilot training ran are three very different machines. And to streamline all three to look the exact same is impossible. And I think they understand that, and they put up, and it takes a lot because they're putting a lot of faith in individuals like myself and Sergeant Bechdel and Sergeant Vance and Sergeant Espinoza, that we are going to be able to take these processes and just make sure they work. And they do hold us accountable. They are really good at like getting the information that they need to get, and we give it to them. And so right now, it's very good. I've seen it go very bad in the past with not getting enough information or getting too much information and like, starting to get into that micromanage realm and stuff like that. But currently right now, in just the training perspective, no, I think the relationship that we have in all three career fields are actually pretty solid from the leadership standard.
That's really good.
That actually kind of makes me, just the way you answered that question, makes me wonder if you can share a story of a good boss and a bad boss. Just kind of some lessons learned, because you've been in for 10 years and we've all had a chance to work with the goods and the bads. Are there any that kind of stick out, an example of each?
Yeah, for sure. So it's actually kind of interesting because there's a bad boss. Like I've had the bosses in the past that just from leadership and even from pilots back when I was in Travis or back in Dover is that micromanaging, changing everything. So when you guys go and take over a new flight, the last thing you want to be doing is go in there and changing every process that's already been standing. Even if they don't work, the last thing you want to do is walk in and just say, I'm changing the entire game plan right now. And because it's just starting off on a bad note. I've had that boss. I had that boss in Dover. But honestly, the worst boss I had was the nicest guy I know. He was actually, I'll drop his name. I don't give a crap. Master Sergeant Jason Flegel was a great guy. Some of you guys know him. Great guy. Still one of my great friends. Worst boss I've ever had. And it was based on the fact that he was too much our friend. Like he would do everything for us. He wouldn't delegate anything to us. He would handle every review, every STRP, every TRB. And he ended up getting a small heart attack from it about 6 months into taking it over. So even though he was a great friend of mine, he was my worst boss, because when we were out like doing whatever we wanted as new instructors and stuff, we had no idea that he was drowning every single day. So when it comes to actually being the leadership position, he was a definition of being the worst one. And I tell him that a lot still. And then the good bosses, honestly, like I had some great leaders out in Guam that were both air crew and non-air crew that, like I said, that trusted us to make the right calls, held us accountable when we didn't make the right calls, and really just like kind of let us perform at the rank that we were currently at. And I think that's what's kind of happening here too, is here's a little bit different because it's not really based on rank as you would see in a CRG, more as it's your crew position and the experience you have in that crew position. But that's what you see here a lot is like Loftus is one of them, where it's where he expects this information, expects this deadline, and he's just going to let us go with it. And then if it doesn't come to that is when he's going to hold us accountable. And when it like if the product didn't line up or if it didn't come in at all, and we know that's the accountability on us. And that's the kind of leadership that we're looking for. We're not looking for hand holding or telling us how to do a process. We're asking for a standard and an expectation, and we can run with it from there. And that's what I've been seeing there. But yeah, that's my story. Is actually my worst boss was probably one of my best bosses too for me, because I got to do whatever I want.
Yeah, I can think of people I've worked for that I didn't like just because of how they ran shops, how they, I don't know, it was difficult to explain. It wasn't here, but it's like the same stories. There was the fake delegation where it was just him putting people's names on projects and then him trying to get the results he wanted, like tailor it how he wanted it, and you just kind of were there. Failure to delegate and trust. And then the other leadership that you see is just anyone who's not genuine, trying to be popular, or incompetent. And I've seen small amounts of that, not here so much or recently, but I think we do a better job of emphasizing what's important. But when I think back, I don't have a specific, this guy at this job or this woman ran a shop. I had people I didn't like, and I didn't appreciate working for, but they come and go. And I think you can tell who you enjoy working with and who's competent, who you trust, and reputations get built on competence and being genuine, someone you like. And like Sergeant Waters said, just his best friend, he was genuine, he did care, he did like, but there's a balance in there that would make better leaders. But great leadership. You see it's being genuine, trusting, and being accountable. But that's all I got.
I got a question for you guys. Thanks for doing this, first of all. Name the best AC you've ever flown with in your career, and give 2 to 3 reasons why they're the absolute best AC you've ever flown with.
I should have been more prepared for that question. I kind of figured something like that might come about, but hold on. Is there something we can move on to from that for now so I can get a minute to think, or the lightning round?
I'll give you 22 seconds.
Some of my favorite ACs I had such a good time with, I might not even remember all the time we had together. No, I think you associate your favorite ACs with some of your favorite missions, and it's a crew, right? Just because the AC is awesome, the best ever, if the crew sucks, it's not a good memory. It's not a good, because I have had great ACs, and the trip sucks. We didn't get time off anywhere. We had back-to-back 24-hour days. And my favorite AC, now that I had avoided it long enough, let's see. It's almost unfair. I'm gonna take another 22 seconds. Are you any closer, Waters? I don't know. I've had a lot of great.
I got you, dude.
Okay.
So I actually I have 2. I have 2 of my favorites. One, like professional wise, it's gonna be Ken Dixon. Some of you guys know. He's a Southern drawl man. Is obsessed with rap. Great guy, but he was the one that he had a he had a way about him of he was very calm and collective on the road and stuff in the box and stuff, but he had an expectation and you were going to hit it. And he was very good at weeding through, for lack of better terms, like that enlisted bullshit. And he knew well enough of when to kind of say like, like, hey, how much like time do you need, load? And then you'd be like, oh, I need like an hour. And he'd look around and be like, do you really though need an hour? And you'd be like, nah, I need like 30 minutes. He'd be like, okay. He was very good at that, and he did it in a way that was really respectful and stuff. And honestly, like there was one time on the road where I kind of burned him. I got in some trouble on the road and didn't tell him about it. He was my AC. And later on, he came to me on another crew that we had together, and he came to my room and he was like, hey, we're going to talk out right now. And I was like, what's this about? And he called me out on that. And he did it in a really professional way, but it was really like, it was at almost like a bro level where he's like, man, like I held you in a like stronger. It was like a disappointed dad talk that I got from him, and which, we all know like hurts more. And so after that, like the amount of respect I had for him to be able to come directly to me face to face and like tell me, like actually have candid feedback is something that is really rare to see anymore. It really did solidify him as like probably one of the best ACs that I flew with. The other one that I got is he was just like a master of the craft and of me, because I flew with him so much, was Major Brian Beck. Again, some of you may know, I don't even think he's in anymore. But I flew with him a lot, and Beck had a way of understanding, like I was saying before, like turning on and off those like personal and professional windows. You didn't even know he was doing it. On the plane, he had an expectation of everybody. He was pretty like strict about it, but then 1 minute he'd be joking about you. But you could just tell from his demeanor and how he kind of was an AC and how he ran his crews was, you knew when he was serious and you knew when he was just joking with you. And there was no like cloudy line in between the two. Like if he came directly to you and he didn't answer on something right then, you knew it was serious, and like, this is not the time to like joke around with him or anything along those lines. But then 5 minutes later, he can come back to you and like start poking fun at you again, and you'd have a good time with him. He was very good at that line. And this wasn't coming from Tech Sergeant Waters. I was an A1C and senior airman when I was flying with him. So for me at that age, like I was 20, 21 years old at that time, to be able to identify those like exact traits that I was kind of explaining before, it's a hard thing to master. Like I've been teaching now for 13 years and I still haven't mastered it. I still have students that either think I'm the devil or think I'm their best friend for some reason. So I don't really know about the best friend thing as of lately, but but to be able to master that opening and closing the professional and personal relationships, like he had that on lock. So those are my two.
Yeah, Beck's good. Beck is a good friend of mine. He was in my wedding, and then
Oh really? Oh god.
Yeah, we're buds to this
Crash
day.
it? You invite him?
Yes, that happened. We'll talk about that all. But yeah, and Ken Dixon, have you talked to him recently?
No, I haven't talked to Ken since I left over.
So he's going through a rough patch. If you didn't know, medically, he's got like a neurological something going on. So it probably would be a bad thing for some of us who know Ken to reach out. Maybe we can do a card. But let's talk about that afterwards.
Absolutely, I'll reach out to him.
Yeah, that'd be good. Joel, to you, man.
One would be Huntsman. I think he might be lieutenant colonel now. Major, I believe he's in the reserve.
Huntsman? Jason
Well,
Huntsman?
I like, again, it's the qualities and the memories we have and the trips we were on. His ability to like take the crew out, have a good time, get called out, show up, and then show up first one at the plane, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and then instruct, iron ass the leg if you had to, and then do it all over again, repeatedly. Could handle the crew in crew rest and on the jet. And I just had, like I said, it's one of those things where the crew was great. The AC obviously just had to master that ability to manage the crew. And the example was we had a real lively Loadmaster. You guys might remember, but what was Red Dragon's name? Will Harden. Anyway, I don't know if you guys all know him, but he was a large personality and talk more than me, but just make claims of, and Huntsman stood up to all of it, laughed and talked him down, handled the crew, had a great, and then it was repeatedly. He wasn't going to get, nothing was too big for him. Like whatever TACC asked, whatever, it's like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to handle it. And he had that ability to, turn it on and turn it off. And he could manage personalities so well. I also liked Lieutenant Colonel Sterling. I don't know if I ever saw him mad. I know he probably got mad, but I remember seeing him being a stage manager or the DO. He was out of town. His wife had a new kid who was pregnant. His house had flooded. Crews were in shambles. Stage was backed up, and he just shows up. Hey guys, what's up? I'm just like, I get mad if I don't get enough coffee. Like, what is going on here? How are you doing this? And I met his dad at his retirement, and I asked his dad, it's like, what is going on? Like, you guys are a great son. He loved flying with him, loved operating with him. And like, what is it? I asked them both. And they just kind of looked at me and they're like, you don't always have to be the boss. And that sat with me for a while, but I love the way those guys could manage a crew. And it starts out with brilliance in the basics, right? They mastered their craft. And so they could have that accountability and standard. When they showed up to the jet, you didn't have to question what they said. And then when they got in the crew rest, they were able to, have a good time, but keep it along the right lines. Didn't he have a Ferrari at something? Didn't he have the Magnum PI Ferrari or something? Like, there's all kinds of stories about that guy.
Yeah, Sterling was amazing. Good stuff, Joel. Thank you.
The hard part with that is I really do enjoy flying with some of the ACs that are in this chat. So just because you weren't a favorite doesn't mean you're not one of my favorites to fly with. I could name a couple of you. I scroll through this list, most of you wouldn't be on. But no, there are several of you that I chat here recently, like, I like to be friendly. I don't want anyone feeling hurt that I didn't say you were my favorite. But no, some of my favorite ACs are in this chat as well. Captain Loftus and I flew for almost 2 months straight. I love flying with that guy.
Major.
Oh, I knew it. I knew it was going to happen one time. I already did it once today. But sorry, Major. We filed that under my paperwork from earlier.
Like I said, I got to bounce out here in about 9 minutes, but I just wanted to float one question. It was kind of similar to Colonel Pollock's, but a little different. And one of the reasons I put techniques for building rapport in the Wednesday video, it came from a question Captain Denny had a week or two ago about, how do you get a crew over the hump when things are looking tough. And I really think that's based on trust and rapport. So I think an important question, especially for our young people and dealing with younger E's, I don't want to say how do you win the hearts of the E's, but how do you build that rapport? What techniques have you seen to really build that trust? Because sometimes you're flying with people you haven't seen before, and outside of positional authority, how can you rapidly build that trust heading out on the road?
I really think that attitude, like positive attitude, goes so far when it comes to ACs. When it comes to getting recut or getting retasked to a mission and everything, or getting broke, long days, all that stuff. Your positive attitude as an AC goes a long way, and a negative attitude goes even longer in the wrong direction. Because enlisted, we're like we're gonna gripe and grumble and everything like that, but as the AC, as that focal point for the entire crew, a positive attitude on all that, it does go, even if it's a bad day. Like, you don't have to come off onto the crew bus and be like, well, what did we learn today, kids? But like, to be able to be like, well, that sucked. Let's not go through that day again, to kind of keep that positive attitude, just like have people kind of like laugh at the situation, joke it off a little bit, but still have that, like that feedback session on that, and like the serious talks and stuff. But that's, I think, is the highest point of what drives a crew through any hard time, is if that AC can keep that positive attitude through all situations, and just keep it going. Even if you aren't having the best day ever, if you can just like muster up that couple of minutes on the crew bus with a smile and be like, hey guys, let's go get it today, it goes a long way. And I've seen ACs get frustrated in the past and have bad attitudes, and the whole crew like just mirrors it, and it just starts you off either on a bad day or ends it on a bad day. So positive attitude is like, that's number one for me on everything when it comes to that front.
Yeah, I would say positive attitude is huge. I like the video you threw the slides in there and steps to building that trust. I same thing. Positive attitude's huge. Being genuine, and you're not always going to have the right answer, but being confident helps. Like Sergeant Waters said, being positive is great, and being genuine, being yourself is huge too, because like Captain Denny, like we flew and she was super positive and just smiling the whole time. And then I think my feedback to her was, I told her, I was like, you're gonna have to be mean at some point. And I would embrace that early and get used to where you need to be, because at some point you tell somebody not to do something, or this is going to be the rule, and guess what? They're not going to follow it. And if all they ever see is like you have to let them know that exists. I know it does. But not to call her out specifically, but it's just genuine, right? It comes off. So if you're just trying to mirror Captain Denny, then it's not going to be genuine. They're going to see that. They're going to read through that and just be like, really? Positive attitude is true and great, but genuine is realistic. Hey, crews like facts, crews like numbers, and like the right attitude moving forward is huge. But that's kind of where, for me, building that rapport starts, and trust, and you know, watching the ego, watching the attitude, looking out for people. I think I wrote down, like, it's almost like bedside manner with a doctor. You know, you want to be professional, but you don't have to be popular, but you have to be, helps to be right. And keep that in mind. Because Sergeant Waters and I have both been around for a while, so it's like we could spot a little bit of, you know, if you're not quite genuine, disingenuine, but also we know quite a few rules ourselves. So if something comes out and you're trying to, like, if you think sliding one by something is going to work, it's not the best way to go about things.
Anyone else? Don't be shy. All right, so the silence has reached the awkward territory. I will give one more opportunity to hop in. Going once, going twice.
I really appreciate what you guys are doing for professional development. I watched some of the videos, saw some of the slides, and make sure to incorporate some of this stuff when we talk to the enlisted side as well. I know it takes a lot of effort, and it's not easily done. So showing up, trying to get something out of it is huge, but the effort put in by leadership to get this done, you know, gets recognized. I'm sure it gets appreciated. So I really enjoy it. I really enjoyed some of the podcasts, the videos, the vlogging Colonel Kramer's doing. He's definitely got a personality for it. So probably future in that. But yeah, good job.
Well, thanks, guys, for. Oh,
Tyler,
go ahead, Joel.
Say real quick, if you guys wanted to throw us like career aspirations, I think one of the things that sometimes we don't always, you know, we talk a lot E's and O's, but maybe we don't always just get to know, like, where do you guys see yourself in 5 years?
Not in charge of training. No, for me, honestly, I'm probably gonna do 2, maybe 3 years here. Then I'm gonna try to get down to Texas to the schoolhouse or to the det and finish off my time there. I love this job, like, but this job it wears on you heavily. And I thought 3 years of being away, like, oh, it'd be cool. I'll be on a tropical island in the middle of nowhere and just kind of relaxing. And that wasn't the case at all. I was gone way more there than I ever was in Dover. So then I got back here and it's back to the grind. So I'm looking forward to, like, you know, doing the best I can here and just keeping up with that tempo. But yeah, 5 years, I see myself hopefully down at that Lackland and teaching, you know, how to, you know, write your name properly at the top of a Form F. that sounds perfect. So that's really all I got until retirement, which isn't that far away either. So
You don't want to manage a mock FTU with no resources for the next 5 years?
yeah, no, I'm good. I enjoy structure and syllabus. So I look forward to having that standard. Like, I love the way our training works, but right now it is it's very difficult to deal with right now because we're not structured. I used to love that about the C5, like Loadmaster training, is that we weren't structured. It was like you brought them into the family and you taught them on the road, and like it was very personal training experience. And I thought we got really good product out of that. When you throw 30 people, you feel bad because they don't get that personal training experience like I did when I was new, or like even the guys did 5 years ago. You know, they don't get that anymore. So now it's just here's a bunch of information, remember it, and here's check, write, and go. And then like, that's what kind of sucks. And I'd like to go back to that. And that's why I'm kind of looking forward to going back to that, like kind of structured, like if I can't have the personal training experience like I used to, I'd like to go back to like the structured, like this is me teaching you. I want to see that light bulb turn on your head, which is like the best moment in an instructor's career is when they finally get it. And then like, you know, pin those wings on them at the end. That's kind of how I want to finish this thing off.
Yeah, again, I think I love seeing the instructor part of it, where you see the student kind of get it after a while. When you hear the aha, you're like, oh, that's what it is, and I thought so. Like, I love that part of it. That's what keeps us going. But as far as me, look to progress. I like running the shop, but eventually, yeah, it looks appealing to turn it over. And once I do that, then evaluator, hang out here for a while, and then yeah, once hang out here for a while. Let's see, got 16 years in, so the goals change, but you know, with the family and stuff, it is awesome. As much and as appealing as the road is, eventually it's kind of nice being home with the kids and everything. So something, you know, looking forward to would be maybe the Schoolhouse the Debt. We have the, let's see, where Sergeant Boots is going, and the sim cert guys down there, or there's a job where we do, we go to Oklahoma City, and where we actually get to, we're still flight engineers, but a check flight where we actually go around to airfields and test out all the equipment and make sure all the approaches and radios and nav aids and everything are up to par. That seems appealing. It's in a decent location for me, and not everyone is Oklahoma City isn't always appealing to everyone, but something like that, you know, seeing what else is out there. But if I stick around the C5 for another couple more years, I'm not going to be upset about it. Maybe an evaluator, maybe seeing those guys that I came in, when I came in and the evaluator showed up in a sweater and threw on his flight suit in the testing room and then sat around, and he was an old reservist, but I always said that guy's got it figured out. Yeah, that does not look like it sucks either. So.
Awesome, guys. Again, thanks for coming out, spending the time. I'm going to bounce out to this other meeting, but Jeff, if you could keep the chat room open in case anyone just wants to commune and speak to some real human beings, keep it open for a while, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks a bunch.
Yeah, I'll say kudos to the Chief Pilot Office for putting this together. Ty and Joel, thank you. This builds trust and it raises our standards, right? And it just makes the brotherhood and sisterhood that much tighter. So thanks, guys, for doing this. It means a lot.
Thanks for having us. Seriously, this is awesome.
No problem.